I had to do that. There's like this strange beam of light right there, which is very amusing to me at the moment. Um, yeah, welcome to a long-awaited video. Just a collection update today. Um, yeah, I just haven't done anything for a while, just concentrating on work stuff, and honestly, the inspiration sort of dwindled for a bit. Hadn't really bought a whole lot of stuff. It's only sort of the last month or two where I've sort of been getting back into buying a few things, and yeah, so before that there was just wasn't much coming through. So yeah, slowly been building up some stuff and thought it was worthwhile doing a bit of a video about it, um, for those of you interested out there. So yeah, I'll just kick straight into it. I've just got quite a few CDs and about 5 or 6 vinyls. Um, Again, what I normally say, nothing ultra underground and cult, but just stuff that I needed in the collection, some sort of gap fillers and whatnot in certain discographies, and some sort of random buys which I hadn't even planned on getting, but maybe had to listen to them on Spotify and thought that's really cool. I'm going to take a punt on that and buy it. So yeah, I'm starting off with which I've got in the background, which you won't be able to hear because my mic sucks. But yeah, the new Gendud, I'll try and pronounce that. Eutakt med Verden. Again, I would have butchered the Norwegian language. A complete sort of polar opposite of their previous album, Angrep, which was an absolutely savage, sort of ultra fast, 28-minute black metal album, just all fast, just straight for the throat sort of stuff. This one's a lot more mid-paced, a lot more Thornsy in the riffing, and some really beautiful acoustic stuff, which I love. I love acoustic guitar mixed in the black metal stuff. So yeah, this band to me just keeps getting better and better. Definitely my favorite of the Norwegian bands these days, or say post 2000. I'm sure there's other hidden gems out there which I've never listened to, but of all the ones that I've heard, Gendud definitely my favorite. So definitely check these guys out. I've mentioned them a few times, so don't want to sound like a broken record, but yeah, check these guys out if you haven't heard them. Up next, one of my most recent ones was this Tormentor bootleg. Just a bootleg of the demo, Seventh Day of Doom. Really cool stuff. Obviously, Anno Domini's, the cult classic. Obviously, this demo, or they're both demos, but Seventh Day of Doom is also had a big influence back in the day. A couple of different songs. Then you still got the song Tormentor on this. A bit slower, a bit sort of rougher, but that ultra sort of cult evil atmosphere is still there. Track 3, Branded by Satan, on this is absolutely gold. Just great melodies, those horror sort of melodies that I don't know, those Eastern European bands are really good at, and even bands like Niflheim sort of took those to the next level when they started doing stuff. But yeah, I just saw this, I thought I'll snap that up. Always had this demo on MP3, and I thought, yep, why not grab it. This was a big one, and I went down the route of getting like a 4-pack fat box or whatever. Usually I like buying the single versions of albums and having that rather than sort of 4 albums in one sort of package type deal. But I was more dipping my foot into the water with this band, and what sort of got them onto my radar was listening to one of Heavy Metallurgy's episodes where they did an album sort of club episode dissecting the Septic Flesh album Ophidian Wheel, and I went and listened to it on Spotify. I was really impressed with it. Just really sort of mystical, doomy type sort of metal. Wasn't black metal or anything like that. It was just really good stuff. They sort of mentioned that there was some really horrendous sort of operatic vocals, which I actually didn't mind. I thought I've heard way worse operatic female vocals on metal albums over the years. So I thought these were quite well done. So yeah, I picked up this 4 CD thing of the first 4 albums. Really blown away by Mystic Places of Dawn, and the second album, which is written in Greek, which I will not try and pronounce. Obviously, it's got Ophidian Wheel, and the 4th album, A Fallen Temple. Really great stuff. Really blown away by the songwriting on the first 2 albums. It's got that sound of your sort of Greek black metal bands that were coming out at the time, you know, like the production style of, say, Rotting Christ and Varathron, obviously because it was recorded at the same studio as those guys. But the songwriting to me is on a completely different level, really progressive without, and I don't mean that in the sense of like a Dream Theater wanky time change thing. I just mean that they're really doing some different stuff as far as, different riffs, different, there's just a lot of stuff going on in the songs. It's not just like verse, chorus sort of stuff. They mix it up with the fast riffs, and then they'll just break into like very reminiscent of, say, like Paradise Lost, old like Gothic era Paradise Lost, mix that with these mystical keyboards and death metal vocals, which obviously they've obviously got a big influence from the death metal past. So but yeah, really impressed with Septic Flesh. I mean, they're a band that I've always seen around, never been interested in checking out their sort of later material. It might be really good, but this is sort of made me want to go further. But these 4 albums so far, mainly the first 3, I haven't really checked out A Fallen Temple as much as I'd like to yet. But in particular, Mystic Places of Dawn and Esoptron, we'll go with that. The second album, just great stuff, and it's been really hitting the spot the last few weeks. So yeah, I mean, this package is pretty cool if you just want to check out that stuff. You probably get it pretty cheap. But yeah, knowing me, I have to go back and buy the single versions of the albums now, and I will probably move this one forward to someone who will appreciate it. So yeah, really impressed. Can't believe I hadn't checked these guys out a long time ago. All right, up next, a bit of a change of style, I'd say. We've got Horizont with their About Time album. Back in, I think it was 2018, this album sort of came on my radar and listened to it a lot. It was hitting the spot, sort of 70s hard rock sort of styles, early 80s hard rock. I like that sort of stuff. Really organic production, good songs, good vocals. Not like it's, I suppose you could say it's sort of, I wouldn't say prog rock. It's not as like it's not like Rush or anything like that. But yeah, a bit more straightforward. Haven't really checked out their latest one, which isn't new, but their latest album, I think it's got a very odd cover. Maybe it's got something to do with hockey on it or something. I can't remember. But yeah, I really enjoy this sort of stuff. It sort of breaks up the monotony of listening to or going through a lot of average heavy metal music. And again, sort of on the same page, but not. I came across these guys a few years back and ordered a couple of albums and a t-shirt from them directly, and that is Hallis, Isle of Wisdom, their latest album, and that is out on Napalm Records. So obviously not a major label, but one of the biggest heavy metal labels. So they're obviously doing some pretty good stuff in this style of music. This is a really cool album, really sort of, this is more proggy than, say, Horizont, and a lot more sort of mystical and atmospheric, with keyboards. His voice is, how would I put it? I love it or hate it type thing. I don't dislike his voice, but I don't love it either. It's just a very sort of odd voice, but musically, these guys are fantastic. So if you're into that sort of style of 70s prog rock sort of stuff, check out Hallis. This was a strange one because I remember seeing this reviewed in an old Terrorizer magazine when I was a kid. And for some reason, the old memory just like, I don't know. I was like, I wonder what that band was like. I never listened to them. We got Finnish Legenda. Obviously, these guys have got some ties to Impaled Nazarene back in the day. I think it's one of the Luutinen brothers or something. I could be wrong. I should have done more research on Legenda. Yeah, this is really cool stuff. Sort of slower, mid-paced, atmospheric metal is how I'd put it. Maybe more like what in that sort of Paradise Lost Tiamat sort of vein, but still not, you know, like a carbon copy, but just atmospheric metal, really, with some black metal leanings, maybe. Really well produced for the, you know, that period. Really spacious sounding production, really clear. You know, it's recorded at that studio Tico, which was one of the biggest sort of studios in that Finnish underground scene back then. So and it had pretty good production. So yeah, there we go. Sir Luutinen, obviously Mika's brother or something. Yeah, Legenda, really cool stuff. I enjoyed this. Now that I've brought it up, I need to probably go back and listen to it again because haven't listened to it for a while. This one was just a random purchase because I heard a couple of tracks and really enjoyed it. Hadn't sort of purchased any of their previous albums. I had only heard them on Spotify or something like that. And it's the latest Hell Militia. You know, I was just in the mood for some more just straight down the line black metal, basically. No robes, no capes and incense, just bare bones sort of stuff. And this sort of delivered, you know. It's not breaking the mold at all. It's still probably typically French in a way, you know. The French have got their own way of doing things. I can't sort of give a comparison compared to their earlier material because I just haven't really listened to their earlier stuff enough. I have heard it. I think I listened to the Jacob's Ladder album at one point and was sort of going through a lot of those French bands, say about 6 or 7 years ago. But it's sort of, yeah, I never bought any of the stuff. And for some reason, this popped up and I checked it out and was really impressed. So if you want some really cool traditional, but not so traditional, but with it, it's definitely not progressive black metal, that's for sure. But it's not like a Transylvanian Hunger copy or anything like that. Great vocals as well. Good stuff. Some older gems here, which had been reissued, obviously. First Carnivore there. Took me ages to, I don't know why it took me so long to get this. I was actually quite late getting into Carnivore. You know, I was into Type O Negative, you know, back in the 90s, and as a teenager, always heard about Carnivore, and it wasn't until a friend of mine showed me Carnivore, and this is probably only about 2010 or something like that, so very late to the Carnivore train. And I was blown away. You know, this album's just a great heavy metal album. Pete's vocals are just, it's probably one of my favorite vocal performances on a metal album, really. Just angry, hate-filled. Yeah, I mean, obviously the middle section to Male Supremacy sort of shows where he was going with Type O. That whole middle section of the clean stuff and the way he's singing and stuff sort of definitely is like a precursor to where he was heading with Type O. Great songs on here: Predator, Carnivore. Great tongue-in-cheek lyrics. You know, a lot of people, you know, may have taken this serious, and these days, if you came out with this album, you'd be cancelled. But who cares? That's a great album. I love it. And also Retaliation. Retaliation to me is a bit more hardcore, whereas that's a bit more heavy metal, very Venom-like at times, especially vocally. This one's a lot heavier, a lot faster at times, but when they do slow down, way more doomier. And again, you can see the parallels to where Type O would go. Again, tongue-in-cheek lyrics and deliberately provocative lyrics, which was bound to piss people off, which is what heavy metal and rock and roll should be doing. None of this safe shit. Great album. Up next, got a couple of creator albums. I've owned these multiple times over the years. I got this reissue of Endless Pain. Yeah, I don't like the cover, and I will not buy the vinyls because I don't like that. I hate how it says remastered there. It just, that bugs me. And it's a really dark sort of cover. The booklet's pretty cool. It's got some cool sort of insight from Millie for each song, and just how young they were, what they went through. You know, I think he says in the booklet that they had to get their mum to sign the contract, or along those lines, with Noise Records, before they could do anything. So they're only like 16, or just very, very young guys. But yeah, a very energetic first album, quite sloppy at times, not overly well played, but the spirit's there, and you can tell it's just young guys going for it. They're passionate, they love what they're doing, and you know, it's got some classic songs which they play to death still to these days, like Tormenta and Flag of Hate, which are probably my two least favorite songs on the album. You know, I'm a total death guy. I like Son of Evil, Living in Fear, Dying Victims. You know, it's got some great songs on here. Millie and Ventor switching up the vocals as they did back in the day, sort of half and half on this one. So yeah, a classic. Up next is Pleasure to Kill / Flag of Hate, tacked onto the end. I think this is about the third time I've owned this. What could be said about this one? They stepped it up. They a bit more down-tuned, it sounds, a lot heavier, a lot faster, a lot more chaotic. Ventor was quite sloppy at this time. He was always that drummer, especially on the first two albums, where it sounded like everything was going to fall apart, but it never did. So yeah, he wasn't at his best on this one, but I think that adds to the charm. And it's you can really see where both death and black metal got a lot of influence from this album. Just chock full of classics. Again, you know, a song like Pleasure to Kill, Ride of Violence are the songs that they will play off this live. Whereas I'm a huge fan of, you know, Ripping Corpse, Death is Your Savior, Under the Guillotine, and Command of the Blade. Yeah, it's got great songs. Every song's absolutely gold. So, and also the Flag of Hate EP is fantastic as well. Bit of a strange production, but 3 great songs. Awakening of the Gods, one of my favorite creator songs. And that takes us to the one after it, which was Terrible Certainty. Never owned this on CD before. Had the vinyl, but sold it to a friend back about over a decade ago. Yeah, this was probably the turning point for Kreator, when I'd say they tightened up a lot. They'd been touring. The riffing got a bit more technical. And I think they had a better producer, or not a better producer, but they a more well-known guy, who obviously knew sound a bit better or something than the previous guy. Yeah, you can see where they're heading. Ventor's drums tightened up a lot, obviously from the touring schedule and just, you know, the constant rehearsing / touring. Yeah, I sort of think this album is a bit of a overlooked one in the Kreator discography. You know, it's got a strange production. It's got a really, you know, if you look at Eternal Devastation by Destruction, it's got not a similar guitar tone, but it's a very odd guitar tone. They've never had that sound before. Really strange drum sound as well. That really high, snappy snare. Yeah, it's they've never done an album like it. So yeah, I mean, Blind Faith, Storming with Vengeance. Oh, Storming with Menace, not Vengeance. Yeah, again, the classic. Behind the Mirror, I love the clean guitar intro to that. Full of atmosphere. It's a really, really great song. So yeah, what could be said about the early Kreator stuff? Up next, I grabbed these purely because I wanted them for ages. I had the original copy of this back on the day when it was on no fashion, and now it goes for a shitload. So I got the Flogger Records version of this, Enter the Moonlight Gate. In my opinion, which doesn't count for much, but this is probably one of the only albums that could push Storm of the Lightsbane. A lot of people say Sacramentum does that. As much as I have come around to liking that Far Away from the Sun album, I still think this is better, and it sort of it does that sort of Storm of the Lightsbane style a lot better. Although in the drum department, they're more a bit more death metal, leading with the snare, with the hammering sort of sound. But great songs, really cool melodies, and just one of the best sort of Swedish black metal albums at the time. You know, obviously a lot of people know about this one, and not much to say. It's a classic, a minor classic. I'll go with, not a bona fide classic. We've got their follow up here as well, which is Unholy Crusade. I hadn't actually heard this until years later. I sort of gave up on Lord Belial after Enter the Moonlight Gate, and a lot of their stuff was really hard to find here in Australia at the time. With this one, they went to Los Angered studio with Andy LaRocque from King Diamond. The previous album was at Studio Fredman, I think, with Frederick Nordstrom, I think his name is. Yeah, so a different production this time. Yeah, more of what was going on with, like, say, Rune Magic, and that's got that really big snare and bit more space compared to the production on the previous one, which was a bit more constricted and compact. A lot more death metal leanings on this one, but some great tracks on it. I love War of Hate. War of Hate is one of my favorite songs by this band, and yeah, really cool stuff. Up next we have Rebellion from Brazil. I'd always seen these guys in mags and stuff like that, and they used to get pretty good reviews and stuff, but it was always like, they're a Morbid Angel sort of rip-off, which suits me fine. That's my favorite style of death metal. I'll take a Morbid Angel rip-off or clone over a Cannibal Corpse and Suffo clone any day. These guys are great. I really love it. It's off the hilt, you know, sort of fast, Morbid Angel-esque black metal. I wouldn't say it's a carbon copy. Probably more in the vein of what, and I'm not saying they were influenced by them, but I just think, you know, sort of like that Behemoth stuff, like Thelema and the one that came before it. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, just sort of what Behemoth were doing, say around 99 to 2002, before they started blowing up. Yeah, really cool stuff, really frantic, brutal stuff with those dive bomb guitar solos, like the Slayer-esque / Morbid Angel / Gene Palabicki type guitar playing. Probably a bit more chaotic than, not as much finesse as, say, a Morbid Angel, but really cool stuff. And this one, which is their EP, with a re-recording as well, on it, I think. So yeah, it's got 2000 recordings and 2017 recordings, which I'm not really interested in because I don't really like re-recordings. But yeah, again, same sort of vein, nothing much to talk about. There's a Morbid Angel cover on it, Day of Suffering. Pretty decent version, but you're never going to top the original, so why bother? I've also been going through a massive Merciful Fate / King Diamond phase lately. What sort of tip? Mainly the 90s stuff, and that was, I was watching an episode from Alan from Primordial, and he sort of went through the whole discography of Merciful Fate, and he was like encouraging the viewers who hadn't checked out the 90s stuff to really check it out. And I hadn't checked out the 90s stuff, apart from the occasional, you know, if I was at a friend's house and I saw the CD and put it on, but never really sat down with that sort of stuff. So yeah, I grabbed, what do we got here? Got the Time out. Oh, can't forget this one. In the Shadows, Time, 96's Into the Unknown, Dead Again from 98, and their final album till the current time is 9. Really impressed, especially In the Shadows. This wasn't expecting this to be that good. Yes, the production isn't sort of, it doesn't have that nostalgia fact of like Melissa or Don't Break the Oath. It's not very reverbed. It's, you know, it's not like a modern, say 2020 production, but for the 90s, early 90s, it sounded quite modern. Everything's quite upfront, not as much reverb on anything. Great songs though, like it's just brilliant stuff. The Bell Witch, The Old Oak is an absolute fantastic song. Just the riffing on this is like just pure evil horror melodies. You can really see where Slayer, say in the early days, were really influenced by certain melodies and that backwards way of writing certain riffs by Old Merciful Fate. And I hear it a lot more in this one. This one's a lot more not catchy. I mean, Merciful Fate were able to always have that sort of catchiness, but mixed with some weirdness, say like in the say like in Satan's Fall from Melissa, where, you know, that a couple of minutes in, it goes into that really discordant type thing. That wasn't catchy at all. But this has got some really almost Slayer-esque type riffs, and it's really impressive. Listen to it again today because I've been playing it heaps. So yeah, this is my favorite out of the lot so far. And obviously my third favorite Merciful Fate album. Time. This one's cool. It's not on the same level as In the Shadows. It's it could be a bit more doomy and sort of groovy at times. You know, Merciful Fate had that sort of you know, groove gets a bad rap. When you in metal, when people talk of groove, they think of you know, Korn and bounce core and Pantera or something. You know, but you know, these guys and even Priest had that sort of, they had a sort of mid groove about them. And even Megadeth has that as well. Good Megadeth anyway. But this is really good stuff. Nightmare Be Thy Name, Angel of Light is a great song. Yeah, really impressed with this stuff. It was really surprising going in, not knowing a heap about these albums and just really delving into them because I've really enjoyed it. Into the Unknown, I remember I used to read Nordic Vision magazine from Norway back in the day, and they were really big on this album. They reviewed it. They'd done a massive interview with King in one of the issues. So I remember hearing quite a bit about Into the Unknown, and surprisingly, it's probably, well, it's not my least favorite of the few 90s albums I got here, but it's not as good as Time, but it's got some great songs. This one seems to be universally not panned, but the weakest Merciful Fate albums, and I'd probably have to agree. I really like the track The Night. I think that's a really cool song. But yeah, it just doesn't seem to have the spark, and maybe they were just sort of dialing it in a bit. Michael Danner wasn't on this album as well, so Mike Weed came in, so maybe that affected things. Danner was obviously on the previous albums with Hank Sherman, obviously. And they finished off with 9, which is a bit more, from what I've heard so far. I don't know this album back to front really well yet. Seems a bit more straight up front, a bit more less sort of progressive and riffy, a bit more structured as far as you know, your straight down the line verse chorus sort of stuff. Yeah, something Merciful Fate probably hadn't really done because they've always been quite a out there sort of arrangement wise, you know, not straight down the line. Very reminiscent. I always thought they were very reminiscent of like what Priest was sort of doing on Sad Wings, Sin After Sin sort of stuff, you know, where the arrangements were just flowing, you know. So yeah, cool album. Probably the most straightforward, but I enjoy it. But I try not to knock over my CD pile here. Yeah, continuing on in the King Diamond / Merciful Fate theme, picked up a couple. I'd only had always been a fan of the first 5 King Diamond albums. So, and out of that, I'd say Abigail and The Eye, probably my favorites. didn't go past that. Whatever I did here, I found to be quite, I don't know. I think it was a production or something. It just didn't hit me. I did listen to the Puppet Master a few years, like say a decade ago, and I actually quite enjoyed that one. But to say that I'd kept up with King Diamond post VI is, yeah, I hadn't. But because I've been going through this phase, I thought I better check it out. And these came up quite cheap, and I'd been listening to them online. So I thought, yep, I like this one. The Graveyard. It seems to be quite a strange one out of their discography. Doesn't get very good reviews on the Fantastic Metal Archives. But I like it. It's sort of stripped back in sound. The one thing that I've noticed about this era of King Diamond is that the productions are sound a bit ordinary. I don't know if they had a really small budget or, obviously King moving to the US and albums weren't recorded in Europe or whatever probably did affect it. And I think a lot of these King Diamond albums were sort of recorded at the same place that the Merciful Fate albums were recorded in the 90s, but the Merciful Fate albums sound a lot better. But this is a good album. I really like this one. From what I heard of people talking about it, I had low expectations, but being me, I don't listen to what people usually say and just go for it anyway. And I really like this one. Voodoo, pretty decent album. I really dislike the drum sound. It sounds like a drum machine. It probably is a drum machine, although a guy is credited. The snare is horrible. It's really high in the mix. And all these have been sort of remastered by Andy LaRocque as well. As you know, can you see that right there? It says remastered by Andy LaRocque, actually on the cover. Who the hell does that? Ruining the great artwork from Necrolord. Yeah, decent stuff. The bongos at the start of Voodoo are ultra cheesy. It's sounds horrible. It has its moments. This album, Lower House is a cool song. The Exorcist, I think it is. It was one of the later songs, but I've got to give these way more of a listen. And I have to admit, sitting through this one was a bit of a chore. Compared to this, it was probably easy. The opening track on this one was really cool. The Trees Have Eyes. I thought that was a really cool song. I don't like the production on House of God. It's a really sterile, again, it sounds like a drum machine, but whereas the drums on Voodoo sounded very up front and sort of like the snare was really high up, this one's sort of a bit more, back, but it's still, I don't know. I don't like the sound of it at all. Yeah, I really need to give this way more of a listen, but the couple of run throughs I've given it, it's just sort of it's just not that good. I'm not going to just force myself to like it. Maybe one day I'll be 73 years old, just going, in my old age dementia, going, put House of God on. Who knows? And I've got the glare there, House of God. Anyway, it's good to have this. Will I check out Abigail 2 and stuff? I'll probably listen to them more on Spotify to see if I'll make that choice to actually fork out. At the moment, probably not. Got some gap fillers here. So, Gateways. I've tried so hard to like this album. A good friend of mine, he's like, you got to keep, you got to really persist with Gateways. I've tried for years. When it came out, I didn't like it at all, mainly because of the production. Didn't like the drum sound. I always thought it was odd that Grand Declaration of War got slammed for its clicky, shitty drum sound at the time, but it actually suited the material. This has got a horrible drum sound. And I don't like the production just in general. And more importantly, I just don't think it's got good songs. To the Victor the Spoils, I thought was cool. I thought that was a good song. But overall, I've never really been able to crack this album, and it's just too, I'm not that Morbid Angel have been melodic, but they've always had some sort of sense of melody that you can grasp onto. This is just like ultra dirgy, sort of uncatchy sort of material, and it's never hit the spot for me. It's my second least favorite Morbid Angel album, and that's not going to change. Had to do it. It was cheap just to have the collection. And you know what? This album is nowhere near as bad as it was made out to be. It's not good at all, but I've heard way worse than this. Yeah, when it's bad, it's terrible, but it's got some good moments. Obviously, Blades for Baal. I don't like I Am Morbid. You know, they're not a band that should be playing sort of Pantera-esque sort of music. Yeah, you know, it's got some decent stuff at times, but it's completely wiped away by all the rubbish. And, you know, what, we got 11 songs and probably 3 are good. But when you stack the good songs up here against anything off Altars or Covenant, they would be rubbish compared to that. So that sort of, you know, the guy who wrote the best song on this, Blades for Baal, is Destructor from Merkskog or whatever. So that sort of says what the hell Trey was doing at the time. But yeah, it rightfully gets slagged out, but I've heard way worse music than this. This one is a good album, let down by a pretty average production. It's got some really cool stuff. It's got some strange stuff like, why do we need a drum solo on an album, from Pete Sandoval. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. And I mean, I remember hearing it when it came out. It was a bit over Morbid Angel at the time, which is strange because I was so, you know, Formulas to me is one of their best albums. They've never done an album like Formulas before or since, you know. And I'd love for them to revisit that sort of style, but again, they've done it, so why would they do it? But they keep on going down this path of this dirgy sort of style of like a Gateways, which they did with the last album, which was pretty good. I actually didn't. I'll take the last Morbid Angel over Gateways any day. But Heretic, it's good. It's not as down tuned at times. You know, it's got more sort of what I like about Morbid Angel. Production's still not great, but quite a underrated album in their discography, I think. Just got finishing off with the CDs with 5 Hate Forest CDs. That being the latest, Hour of the Centaur, Sorrow, Battlefields, Purity, and finishing off with the most ancient ones. There's no point going through each one because they're quite, apart from I think it's Purity, which is the more slower, odd one, but it's just ultra Blizzard material, very reminiscent of you know, Immortal in their sort of pure Holocaust Battles in the North vein, which is pretty cool because, you know, I mean, apart from that period back then when people were influenced by Immortal, both in sound and mainly song titles and stuff, no one's really taken that sound and run with it very well. I don't think. I can't think of a band these days who's playing in that sort of style. You know, obviously Roman, the main guy from Drudk, where he's a lot more atmospheric and stuff, and this has got its own atmosphere, but it's just done in a more furious, you know, not straightforward drum wise and tempo wise, but you know, it's got those very hypnotic riffs, which sort of are very atmospheric, and you can just sort of hear what's going on in those riffs. Very subtle sort of melodies in the riffs. Yeah. Again, I'd heard of these guys back, 15 years ago, sort of forgotten about them and heard about the Hour of the Centaur album that was pretty good. Been getting good feedback and decided to check it out. Was really into it and thought I'd pick up the other ones. So yeah, really like the Hate Forest stuff. Probably not as good as Drudk, but yeah, good stuff. All right, so I'll move on to the vinyls. Starting off with Dot Imsgard 666 International. I think originally when it was reissued with Peaceville, it was a double vinyl, double white vinyl. This one's just a single black. Sounds good, you know, compared to the Talker vinyls that I sort of reviewed one of the previous videos. It sounds great. It's, you know, it sounds good, but it's not fantastic. Look at that photo. Fantastic. Yeah, this album was you know, a big change for you know, black metal at the time, 99. You know, you look at that cover, that sums up Moonfog 99 2000 era, and there goes the record. And it didn't break. Yeah, it's very Dot Imsgard had already shifted with the Satanic Art EP, but this just takes it to a complete new level. They just went nuts. And reading about the process of this album in that Dale Patterson book was pretty, when you think that it wasn't done digitally, it was all like old school, you know. So it must have been a very hard process, and it was very cut and paste, it seemed. And I remember Apollyon mentioning that, you know, they'd be like, "Oh, do you want to come in and do a bass part on this section?" Him obviously being the bass player or something, and he was like, "You can do it. You know, I'm not coming in to play 3 riffs or something." So the process itself was sort of a strange process for songwriting at the time, and probably something that wasn't the norm, and it probably reflects how the music sounds on the album. It's just very chop change, just completely mental sort of stuff. But I really enjoy it these days. At the time, I wasn't interested. It probably, you know, for me, that last album of Dot Imsgard, A Umbra Amiga, which is a really progressive masterpiece for me. It's a great album. Made me delve back into this album, and now I appreciate it a lot more. But bit of a game changer in how things were, especially in Norway. And then you had you obviously had this and Rebel Extravaganza coming out at the same time, or same year. So yeah, times were changing, and the cult kiddies weren't liking it. All right, up next, I only received this the other day. Very happy to. I'll try not to drop it like I did 666 International. Ceterial's Nord released or reissued on Soulseller Records. This is, you know, one of my favorite Swedish black metal albums. They never touched the glory of this album, particularly the first song. But listening to it today, it's a very just riffs all over the place. I sort of mentioned to a friend that there's more riffs in the opening track than some bands have on 3 albums. It's just relentless. Recorded at Abyss Studios, which normally for me, I'm not a big fan of, but it suits this album. And yeah, Soulseller's done a great job with this clear vinyl. Yeah, if you can get it, get it. Already got this on CD, but wanted the record. Decided to get Far Away from the Sun by Sacramentum. Yeah, I've really grown to like this album a lot. You know, I've said before that back in the day, I just wasn't interested because they had this sort of thing attached to them about being a dissection clone, and it wasn't until I actually listened, and also the production. I wasn't a big fan of the Dan Swano Unisound productions in this era. They were really small. That whole Breed Murder Day and this album sound I wasn't a big fan of, but this has got a charm of its own. They've definitely got their own style. They're not a dissection clone. There are slight elements, but you know, who the hell, you know, who else doesn't from Sweden at times? Yeah, this is really good stuff, well written stuff. And I'm glad that I've come around to it. Staying in Sweden, I just ended the not ended the Necrophobic discography, but at least the first 6. So got Hrimthursum, and I'm not going to take the plastic off this one, and Death to All. So I mean, around this era, this is sort of an era where they were still putting it. It's good albums, but it was getting a bit stale. I think maybe in the production as well. This one sort of branched out a bit more with some orchestral moments and stuff. But they've definitely got their own sound that they just cling to, and they're still doing that these days. These are good versions. Century Media has done a pretty good job, and I mean, it's good to have, even though that looks quite blurry actually on closer inspection. I was about to say that the covers look great, and all of a sudden I'm like, that's bloody blurry. Anyway, can't win them all. Death to All was one of my favorites in the Necrophobic sort of discography until I really cracked into the earlier material. I thought this was like really dark stuff, and it had sort of almost like a Niflheim type influence to some of the melodic guitar work, which were more based on sort of horror melodies than say Iron Maiden melodies. Revelation 666 got one of the best ending sections of a song you'll ever hear. Listening to the La Satan, hang on, let me get this. La Santissima Muerte. Track 3 we'll go with. Yeah, that's the one that's incredibly Niflheim. Reminds me of Niflheim, especially in the opening riff. Just the choice of melodies and choice of the tone. Yeah, so this is one of my favorite Necrophobic albums. Glad to have it on vinyl. All right, that wraps up the collection update. Hopefully it wasn't too boring and I didn't babble on too much, but I know I did. And I also dropped a record mid-video. How good's that? And I won't edit it out because that would be too fancy, and I'm not fancy. So see you next time. Bye.